I've wanted to have this guest on the program for a long, long time and wanted to wait to do it in studio because it's just a little different when it's in studio. I have described him, and this is with the utmost respect, to the New York Rick, to Eddie Hearn's Ariel Helwani, if that makes sense. The right-hand man. Some might say the brains behind the entire operation. He is the CEO of Matchroom Boxing. He is the one and only the prodigy, Frank Smith. Is he there? Oh, there he is. Okay, there he is. I had a whole big intro. He didn't even hear it. He was standing outside. Hello, Frank. How are you?
What a missed.
You missed the whole thing.
Yeah, I'll have to watch it back.
Usually Eric opens the door.
No, he said stay outside. He said I might get embarrassed.
You know who that guy there, I have said, the guy who walked you in, yes. I have said
he's me.
You are, yes.
Yes.
You to Eddie is him to me. He's been with me for 15 or so years, loyal, ride or die, no matter what. The brains behind the operation.
Everyone needs one.
Yes.
Everyone needs one. You have the face, and then you have the behind the scenes.
So I said I need a photo at some point of you guys together.
We'll get
Eric
together.
and Frank. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
It's great. You had a couple nice little run this morning. I saw that.
Yeah, nice little
with Darren
5K.
Barker. Yeah, you guys in the 5Ks.
Yeah.
The Matchroom Social is basically just 5Ks at this point.
It is. That's the aim of the game.
Yes.
But I was struggling this morning, to be honest.
You?
Darren Barker hasn't run in 8 years.
And what does that mean? Today was the first time?
Today, or the second time he's run. Okay. And I was next to him, and I think he was thinking, what am I doing out with this guy? Like, look, I'm not too athletic. I'm not competitive
I see you out there doing the push-ups with the kids and all that.
I try.
Well, you look fantastic.
Thank you.
Everything going very well for Matchroom. Congratulations on the rebrand. We actually have a side-by-side, because I think you're behind it, right?
I mean, it depends who you ask.
Okay.
I suppose it depends. If you had Eddie here, Eddie would say it was all him. But I'll be honest, I didn't come up with the logo.
Okay. Which one, the right?
The right. But I came up with the idea that we need to change the logo.
You did?
But
okay, so I want to ask you why.
People came up with it.
Can I just say, I really love the period, as I think you did as well. At least you said it in the spoof video.
Yeah.
It was classic. It was clean. Why did you feel the need to change it?
I think we felt that for years, sometimes it's easy to get complacent and sit there and go, oh, we're doing really well, everything's looking good, and not look at things and say where they need to improve. And I think we have such a great brand within the business,
right?
Also to consumers with Eddie, and the Matchroom. When you hear Matchroom, you go, oh, Matchroom Boxing.
Yeah.
But I feel like we never had that look and feel, that sort of sexy edge. Okay, and I think that's what it gives us. And we needed to
How many
change.
months ago did this start?
12 months.
12 months?
Yeah.
To change that? I know it's not just that. It's a whole
package.
Everything.
It's the whole ethos.
The whole
it's everything behind it. Ross Garrity, who led it. Alex Haynes, who...
Oh, my God. Hainesy?
Yeah, Hainesy.
He was behind this?
He was a big part of it. He was a big part of creating the new look and new feel.
One of the best, if not the best person in the business. And I know he's going to clip this off and put it on his social, but he deserves it because he is such a brilliant mind. Dare I say, underutilized.
He is, but he'll also raise his every time you say how good he is. Every time we have like an appraisal or an annual review, he's like, what about what Ariel says about me? I'm the best in the game. But we felt we needed a change. I think when I first said it to Eddie, he was like, what are you talking about?
Oh, really?
Yeah. But he will come on here and say it was all his idea, so we'll let him have it.
So you pitched it to him?
Yeah. At the start, it was, do we need to change the name of Matchroom Boxing?
Oh, wow.
And then we did a lot of...
radical.
Yeah, but we did a lot, we did a lot of research with a group that helped us put it together and went out to our fans, and the team internally as well, and the people we work with day in, day out, and say, what do you want to see? What do you think needs changing? So it was a year process to get to the point you see now.
So Matchroom isn't just boxing, of course. Has the entire Matchroom look changed, or just the Matchroom Boxing?
Just boxing.
Okay.
Boxing. So obviously Matchroom as a holding company, we have the darts, we have the snooker, 9-ball pool, and boxing. Boxing has been the one probably we've been known most for the last 40 years. But Matchroom still remains as it is, and Matchroom Boxing now has its standalone 11B logo, which Eddie likes to call it.
Yes. And the clip was great of you guys. Yeah. The acting was phenomenal.
It wasn't acting. That was a normal day in the office. I think we could get a career in some kind of sequel or prequel.
It was very Office-esque.
Yeah.
The
it's as
camera.
if we copied it.
It was great. You just had the show, the Eubank Catterall show. That was the first one under the new look, right?
Yes.
Was that weird for you as someone who is so ingrained to see different logo, different color schemes, all that stuff?
I think it was good. Like I say, we always knew we needed to change. And I think some people in businesses, they get too attached to things and go, oh, we're the best at what we do. and nothing needs to change, and we just continue to do what we do. But we're always looking to take it forward, in everything we do. And it wasn't just a logo change. It was the fight week. It was the press conference. It was the weigh-in. Because, for me, Eddie is the passionate boxing fan. I'm more your sports fan, like casual audience, right? And I watch things and I go, it's a bit boring. Like, how do we take it forward and attract an audience like me of people who are going to sit there and watch these shows, these build-up shows, sell the stories of fighters, rather than just do what's been done for 100 years because that's the way it's been done.
So I noticed all the changes. I'm a big fan of all the fight week activities and whatnot. I have told Eddie myself that I found the press conferences to be a little stale. The press conference that you did last week, so this was the first one, was more variety show.
Yeah.
There were like different segments and different areas where so very different from what anyone is doing. Were you happy with the first one?
Yeah, and I think there's improvements that can be made on top of that as well, and we'll take the feedback of people. But I feel it felt fresh and quick, and it didn't stay still. It can get stale.
Yeah.
Sometimes you watch a shot for 40 minutes, and I'm thinking, I'm bored. And I work there.
Yeah.
And then the fighters, you see the fighters sitting there who have been there for 35 minutes, are on their phones. Why is anyone going to watch that and go, I need to tune into this on Saturday night? So for me, it was about keeping the pace up. I said to Eddie before he went on the stage, I said, please, you got 7 minutes. And he spent 4 minutes talking and then realised he only had 7 minutes, and he overran. I think he did 11 minutes. But for him, that was quite impressive,
Why not let fans in?
We do at certain shows. It's about when the demand is there. The weigh-in, we had them there, and we did our small talk show afterwards as well. And that was a great thing to add. But I think fans in time at the right shows as well, when you can get the audience there, and a bit of fan interaction, ask the questions they want to hear.
It's worked for the UFC. For some of those big shows, when they have the fans in there, they just add a lot of energy, which sometimes I think is lacking in these press conferences.
For sure. And I also think the same thing doesn't work for every fighter.
Sure.
The same, host may not work. You may not get as much out of one person as you get out of another. Eddie may not get as much out of a young fighter than Charlie Parsons, who, we used on Small Talk with Sonny Edwards, or Jamie, or Darren Barker. Different fighters react differently to different people. And I think that was a big thing we were looking at, is how do we best tell the stories of these people rather than just do the same thing week in, week out.
So this week is a big week for you guys, yet technically, correct me if I'm wrong, you're not promoting or producing the Friday show.
Nope.
Do you have any sort of promotional involvement on the Saturday show at Louis Armstrong?
We not directly in this show. Golden Boy are leading that one. But
how does that work, by the way? Because you guys did the Times Square one, right?
Yeah.
And so why aren't you doing this one?
Just because of the different relationships with different fighters. That has been one of the great things as well, working with Turki Al-Sheikh, is involving all different promoters and working together with different people to make things happen. For this show, we've obviously working with Shakur Stevenson on Saturday night. We'll help push things around the event, and any way we can help. We work very closely with the team. We did the event at Tottenham a few weeks ago, did Times Square, did LA. So we have a great relationship, and any way we can get involved and help deliver a successful event, that's our job, that's our business.
So obviously Katie has been with you guys from the beginning. Were you instrumental in bringing her over?
It was Eddie really had the relationship.
DM.
Yeah, that was
you were there, right? Boots on the ground.
Yeah. It's been an amazing journey.
To have her in such a big fight on such a big stage, but not, because I even noticed, correct me if I'm wrong, like you guys don't really push this one.
Yeah.
I don't think Eddie's going to be on the stage today.
No.
What is that like for you guys?
Yeah, look, it's different, but you have to do the best things by the fighters you represent. And that's always been the difference with us, I think, as promoters, is we've always worked to deliver the best possible opportunities to the fighters we work with. The journey we've been on with Katie Taylor and what she's done for the sport is outstanding. And it's been a pleasure to be involved in it. That first fight at MSG, I always say, out of the hundreds of fights I've worked on, that was one of the best nights I've ever been involved in. That atmosphere in MSG.
Unbelievable. And
also in Dublin, her 2 fights with Chantel Cameron in Dublin. I've never experienced anything quite like it. The passion they have for Katie Taylor is like nothing else. So to be involved in that journey has been amazing. And look, the reality of it is ego, isn't it? At the end of the day, like the things you met, like being on the top table or this, that, the other, that's ego-led. It's about being involved in these stories and being involved and staying involved throughout a fighter's career and that journey that you work through together.
How's the relationship with MVP these days?
Yeah, we've had our ups and downs quite publicly.
Yeah.
And, things seem to be good. I think we're never always going to agree, and you're never always going to agree with any partner or any people you work with. But if you can do good business, happy days. But it's definitely in a better place than it has been over the past few years, I'd say.
Are there any promoters that you refuse to work with?
No. Look, I'm very open about promoters. I will be open about my opinion on promoters. There's a lot of people I don't agree with. There's a lot of things I don't agree with. But if it makes sense for the fighters you represent, again, you have to put away, there's too much ego in this sport and in fight sports in general that get in the way of things happening. So you have to just go, do you know what? It makes sense. Let's do it. Let's make it work.
How do you decide as far as with Eddie, and I know there's a whole team, but like for the longest time, I think he was just kind of the front-facing guy. Now I've noticed you do a lot more media.
Yeah.
You don't mind being out there. How does that balance work?
It was, to be honest, it's never been the focus for me. You know, I'm not like Eddie. People compare me to Eddie and say he just wants to be like Eddie, or he sounds like Eddie, or like I've been around him since I was 14 years old. You know, I met him when I was 14 years old.
It's an unbelievable story.
Yeah.
You mind telling it to us? I know you've said it a million times before, but
he'll go at me because he says, "Oh, you're just so dull. Just make up some new story." But I met him when I was 14 years old. I was selling raffle tickets at Romford Greyhound track, and I'm selling raffle tickets for charity. And when I went in there was a Bentley parked outside. I went, "That's nice." And you know, being a 14-year-old, you're impressionable. Everything's about money, or for me, it was at that time in my life. And I sold him raffle tickets, and someone said, "That's the guy with the Bentley outside." And I went, "The tight bastard only gave me $20. So I went back up to him. I got $50 out of him. And then I asked him for a job. And I think he looked at me and thought, stay in school, you know, like leave me alone.
Did you know who he was?
No.
You never heard of the family?
I wasn't a mad sports fan, if I'm honest. Like I followed football, you know, I went to West Ham, but I wasn't a crazy sport fan. It wasn't what drove me. At that point, I was impressionable to money. Okay. Again, being honest, like I wanted to be a stockbroker in London. Because it was like, oh, that guy's got a Ferrari because he's stock. They were the kind of things I followed. And I think when I met him, I just thought, oh, and someone said he's got his own business. I went, I'll go and work for him.
Wow.
And then I pestered him for a job for months and months and months. And I remember going to the train station, and I got to the train station. I'd left my wallet at home, and I had to borrow £20 off a stranger at Chelmsford train station in Essex. And I never found the guy again.
Wow.
And I really owe him my life, to be honest, because it's, you know, if I'd missed that job interview, I never would have had a job.
Okay, and so what was the job early on? Like they say T-boy.
T-boy, like runner, like making teas, coffees.
If someone would call you a T-boy here in America, that would be an insult. But that's like a real title?
But if they called me it in America, I wouldn't mind. You know, I started...
Like an intern.
Yeah, I started doing anything. I suppose, like, is it post-room people say as well in America?
Yeah. A runner is someone who just goes like, hey, can I get a coffee? Can I get food?
I got
laundry.
pizzas.
Yeah.
You know, I got pizzas, I got teas and coffee. I was very good
literally,
at it.
like the lowest.
The lowest of the low.
Yeah.
But it gave me that drive. And I think when I got into the company, it was very different back then. This was 17 years ago. I'm 32, or 18 years ago at 14, 32 years old now. And the business has completely changed. It still has that family mentality of a business, but it was a very different place to be. And when I started, I think I was on $40 a day or something like that. I was working 19-hour days. I'm not sure if it was illegal, but we won't press charges for it. So I would just do anything, literally. Sometimes I'd sit in the office and they go, we got nothing for you to do. And I'd be like, they go, go and swim, go in the swimming pool, or go and learn how to deal poker cards, you know, or flip poker chips. And I'd do that for days.
You just wanted to be around.
Yeah. And I think whatever I did, I would have worked hard. You know, whether it was in sports, whether it was in going into the city to work in banking or finance, or working in a superstore, I would have worked hard. And that was always, whatever I went into, it was just work hard and see where you get to.
I heard you tell a story that in your early days with Eddie, you might have been 16, 17. You stayed up really late. Yep. Alarm goes off a few hours later.
Unplug the phone
thinking it was like a mistake or something. And you show up like 2 hours late.
Yeah. Crying, my eyes out.
A lot of people would fire you on the spot.
Yeah.
Did you think you would be fired?
He thought about it, I'm sure. No, you know, I was sitting in a room. We were producing a poker event, and I was sitting looking at the cameras. I was doing something, logging cards or something. And out of the corner of my eye, he walked in to this television truck, and he walked up behind me and he just dropped a letter in front of me. And I was 16 years old. I'd never worked anywhere before. And I opened the letter and it was a final warning. And I wish I still had the original of it, because it had the tears that I was crying on there. And I remember thinking, you know, the first thing I thought at that time was my mum. I was like, how am I going to tell my mum? Because my mum had put pressure on me to, work in whatever you do, work hard, and give it your best. And I was like, I've been here for 2 months and I'm about to get fired. But I was never late again. And the final warning still stands.
That's amazing. So he wrote it out like this is
I'm
it?
not sure he wrote it. I mean, the spelling was a bit, I posted it once and a few people did raise some of the spelling. I'm not sure he wrote it himself though.
Any incidents since then?
No, never. That was perfect record since then. I've done 15, 16 years of being, no trouble whatsoever. But just a few interviews like this, like you were saying there about how do you split up the time now. And it was never my focus. Like I love what I do. I love operating events, running shows. I love putting on shows. Like that is for me what drives me. Every week I will get to walk out and go, wow, look at what we did. So it was always the focus for me was about that side of it. As things have progressed, the business has got bigger. We have a whole range of sports, as we said. Eddie is obviously busier amongst a whole group of things. We have multiple shows on the same days. I started doing more and more of this, and you get used to it. But the only way you improve is by making mistakes. And I remember the first press conference I did, I was probably 23, 22. My legs, I was sitting at a table like this, my legs were shaking. And but every time he'd ring me afterwards, he'd go, what on earth was that? And you think, I just need a bit of support. But it's one of those things with all the mistakes is only, how you get better at.
Has there ever been a time where you did an interview and he's like, nah, didn't like that answer?
Yeah.
You shouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
You said too much.
He doesn't say too much like that. He'll joke. He'll wind me up. He'll say, what on earth were you saying there? What route were you going down with that one? But I'm quite safe in terms of I'm quite the corporate head. I deal every day with the corporate side of our business. He does as well, but that's my day to day. And I don't take as many risks as him. But he's different. It's his business. He's been doing it a lot longer than me. He's much more comfortable saying certain things. I will always stay close to the line, say what I think.
Sure.
I'll never not say what I think, but I won't go too risque with it. And maybe that's what comes over time.
Well, that's why perhaps it was noteworthy. Ben Eubank weigh-ins, you're in the mix there, and it was a different side of you.
Yeah.
You got a little heated there with the Eubank team.
He's actually my brother-in-law as well.
Okay, so that's the weird thing about this. We were talking about it earlier.
Yeah.
You're married.
Not married, basically.
You call it
We've been together a long time, yeah.
7, 8 years? 9 years?
Yeah, coming up to 10 years almost.
With senior's daughter, junior's sister.
Yeah. And
her name, please?
Emily.
Emily. First of all, how did you meet?
At a boxing show. When Junior was fighting.
Okay.
I think it was 10 years ago in October or so. He was fighting on our card, a guy called Tony Jetta in Sheffield.
Okay.
And met her there, and then the rest is history.
Has this been awkward at all? Especially as this saga for the last 3 or so years, you're very much on the other side of the fence, right? Your guy is Connor Ben. She's the daughter. Does this not get awkward?
I try and keep it separate, in truth. The only time it's difficult is these kind of things.
Okay.
But I've never said anything detrimental about Chris. Right. I wouldn't do that. It's not my personality. At the end of the day, he's a fighter. He gets in the ring, he fights. He said things about me, and that's something I just have to get on with. I'm not going to respond to it, because I don't think it's the right place to do it, in truth, with the family relations.
Sure.
And even when I did that press conference, Eddie called me up. He called me scumbag number 2. I had I never said anything about Chris. And I was actually going to say that day, these guys don't always get the respect they deserve, both Connor and Chris, because of their fathers, because of where they've come from. And it's like anyone in business, like Eddie with his father. People never quite give the respect, even though he works harder than 99% of people I know, because they look at their fathers and go, you're just there because of them. Don't get me wrong, they all had an opportunity, a helped opportunity to get to that point. But I was actually going to say that day, the respect, they deserve so much respect for being in the position they're in because they've done it themselves as well. And look at what they went on to deliver as well. What a spectacular fight. So I try not to let the politics of boxing get in the way of outside. I'm very 2 different people. I have no, people think I have no ego, I have no care. It's boxing and business, and you walk away, and then it's personal, and you have to try and keep everything.
Do you have
separate.
any kind of relationship with Junior?
Not particularly. Okay. I did at time. I spent Christmases with him. I have done.
So that's why when he called you scumbag number 2, I was like, is this just a work, as they say in the pro wrestling business.
Maybe he'll tell me in a few years that it was. I don't know. But
so you don't talk behind the scenes. Your buddies, that was great. No. And how does his sister feel about all of this? That's got to be awkward. That you're her partner.
Yeah, she doesn't really get involved in that side.
She doesn't pay attention to it. How can
tries
you not?
Not to, and I try not to as well outside because you have to keep it separate. And she's not in that world. She's not in the media. Like, she has no interest.
She doesn't work in boxing.
No. And she has no interest in all of this world.
Yeah.
Like, I do this as part of my job. Krista, she's not interested. Okay. So we try and keep it as separate as we can.
What about you and Senior?
Yeah, we've had, good. I get on with Senior. He's an amazing character. And I think more fighters can learn from what he's done in the sport and what he's created, because he's unlike anyone else, and I've known him longer, obviously, because of my work in boxing, probably 12, 13 years.
Yeah.
And to see, I always look back at when you think about what he did in his career pre-social media, could you imagine how big he'd be if social media was around, like, as a character?
Oh my God. Still an incredible character, and he's had this explosion as of late. So going back to that moment, why were you so fired up?
What, at the press conference?
No, the one on the weigh-in day.
Oh, the weigh-in?
Yeah.
No, I'm very relaxed. I just react. I think I'm quite sarcastic.
Yeah.
I'm quite dry, and I think it riles people up, and I just have a laugh with things. And the guy in question said some things about me, and I was just like, I wasn't going to fight it. I've never had a fight in my life. I'm not trying to fight anyone. I was just like, come outside, let's have a conversation about it. I think he would have rather, thrown a right hand. And
sometimes when people say that, it implies let's fight.
Yeah, come outside?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe most people.
Yeah, but not
for
you,
me.
Not you.
I just wanted to have a chat.
Did you see that Junior got fined $10,000?
Yeah, I actually, someone asked me about it earlier. I thought it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Like, if you're questioning what he did, deal with that. If your problem is that he used social media, it doesn't really make much sense.
It's either he used this on or he didn't. They're saying for improper use of social media.
Yeah.
That's a little bit too much.
It's the smallest fine he's had to date.
Right.
He had 100,000 before that, so I thought the 10,000 was one to get away with. But I don't understand it. We don't represent Chris Eubank Jr. Sure. It's not our role. But yeah, it didn't make much sense to me.
The rematch is set though.
September 20, yeah.
But no location announced.
No, working through that now. So
has a broadcaster been announced?
Not yet. No,
okay.
The rematch was signed, so it was always a 2-fight deal. It was always a 2-fight.
So it'll be
deal.
the same terms.
Yes.
Same weight.
Yeah.
Rehydration clause. Everything. Okay.
Yeah. And that was announced last week, and further details. Look, it's not long away. I think it's 12 weeks away.
Sure.
So
when will the venue be announced?
Hopefully in the next, next week or so. We've got meetings out here that are taking place, to plan everything. So yeah, hopefully.
It would have to either be Hotspur Stadium or Wembley, right?
It would be amazing. Yeah. I mean, look, it was a massive event. There was, again, you talk about like Katie Taylor events and shows. That night just had everything because of the build-up. And then the fight, and you can talk up a fight as much as you want. Sometimes you can make a fight, so it's going to be the best thing ever. And it's live sport. It doesn't deliver. That fight literally had
incredible.
Everything. And this will be no different.
It was a movie. It was literally a movie.
Yeah.
The way it all played out
for years.
Yeah.
It's a fight that's been built up for 30 odd years. And they did everything asked of them and more. And the one thing I would say, I don't think those guys in any other fight would have done what they did that night. Right. It wasn't human what either of them did. What a spectacular night. And in a sport where sometimes fighters now coming under fire for not delivering, that was definitely not that.
Speaking of stadiums, from your perspective, how close have you gone to Croke Park with Katie? That to me is like the last thing left, if there is anything left.
Yeah, we had a lot of meetings with Croke Park. It was very expensive, and at the end of the day, we're trying to run.
It's like more expensive than MSG.
Yeah, I know
MSG is insane.
Dublin to run an event is possibly one of the most expensive places in the world.
Is it because of security?
No, not just that. Hotels, like everything around Dublin. And I don't know why. Is more expensive. We've done shows all around the world, obviously, at the biggest stadiums around the world. Croke Park was like something I've never seen.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it almost unreasonable?
We came under fire. I think so.
Yeah.
I think so, but they will say other people pay for that. Boxing's very different. When you're in a venue for one night, it's very hard to make it work. When you go to these venues with concerts and you're doing 3-4 nights and you're selling tickets and the costs are already there, it's very different. Boxing is you're in and out in a space of 6 hours and you're done, and then you tear it all back down. So it's very hard to make those numbers stack up is the reality.
So do you think that dream is dead?
Look, I'd always love to say there was
It's not in the
chance.
works. There's no.
No, but it's very unlikely.
Do you think there is a chance Friday's her last fight?
I think, and this is like a discussion, not bringing it up, but AJ as well, when people talk about AJ, it's whenever they feel like they've had enough. She deserves to do whatever she wants. If she would have retired after the last Serrano fight, she's done everything in the sport. Mm-hmm. She's a trailblazer in the sport. Who would have said she would have done to go on to do what she's done? I think she still has a passion for it. She still loves the sport. It's what drives her every day. All she does is train. She's been a professional her whole career. She's never taken, she's never gone the wrong direction. Everything she's done has been to the T by the book. And if she wants to carry on for another 5 years, she'll carry on for another 5 years, and she deserves that. So, it's for everyone can have opinions. And I've said before, I've got a lot of I work with a lot of fighters that become friends as well. Derek Chisora being a great example, someone we don't promote. I said to him 2 years ago, he should retire. Look, he's about to fight for a world title.
Yeah.
So what do I know?
I mean, you do know a lot, but yes, the fight game is a little bit funky in that regard. And actually, she told me on Monday, there's a lot of things. We did the face-to-face, and she was like, 136 they demanded that I walk out first, all these things that I've had to give up to do this fight, and she wouldn't do the same, she wouldn't do the same if the shoe was on the other foot. She wouldn't do the same. She wouldn't give me the third fight if she was up 2-0, all that. Was it difficult at all in the road to making this fight? Because typically, I mean, she is the undisputed champion.
Yeah.
The fact that she's walking out first is a little atypical, right?
Yeah, but it just shows, it goes back to the point of ego in this sport.
Yeah.
And if you take away ego, things can get done. And Katie Taylor is someone who doesn't have an ego. Katie Taylor, with all the success, is someone who has never changed. You go into a changing room, there's still the same people in that changing room today as there were when the journey started.
Yeah.
And you don't see that. I'm sure, like in all the sport, you just don't see people do that. And I think sometimes when you step away and you go, do you know what, who cares about all these things? We've made so many fights in the past where I've said to fighters, no one's ever remembered who walked second in a fight that they won. No one ever goes, oh, do you remember he walked?
That's a good point.
Who cares?
Yeah.
But we're in a sport dominated by ego. And if you can step away from that and you can make rational decisions and go, again, who cares? Does it work for me? Yes. Happy days.
Yeah. You're still getting paid the same.
Exactly.
Speaking of AJ, you've known him for quite some time, signed him after the 2012 Olympic Games. I saw this photo of a very young Frank Smith with Anthony Johnson. I mean, I wonder, Anthony Joshua, I should say, Johnson's an MMA fighter. How old are you in this picture?
That has got to be about 23, 24. And AJ is one of those people, we've worked with him since his professional debut in 2013. I took him for his medicals.
Wow.
I took him to Specsavers and told people he was an NBA basketball
That's
player.
incredible. This is after he wins Olympic gold.
After he won Olympic gold, yeah. And he's just been the best player. We work with so many fighters and you meet so many people. And the best normally are the ones who are the best to do, like the people who get to the pinnacle.
Yeah.
The people who are just like, they're good, great to deal with.
Yes.
AJ is exactly that. It's always been, you do what you do. He's never he's had opportunities to go and do other things and he's never looked elsewhere. And it's worked. And that loyalty goes both ways. And I would do anything for Anthony Joshua. He's more like a friend than a client. And that's the same with fighters. Darren Barker, someone we worked with for years. When you build those bonds and those relationships with people, you'd literally do anything for them. And in this sport, you need that.
It feels like in the Eddie Frank era where you guys really took that next step, especially with DAZN and coming to America, it was AJ and Katie, and you couldn't have picked two better people, two more loyal people, two people who haven't really been involved in scandals or embarrassed you or the company or the countries that they represent, right? Like I think
100%.
Those two, in terms of like founding fathers, for lack of a better term, have been instrumental in your success. We are obviously approaching the end for the two of them, and you always have to have the new ones. I saw you bring out Leo Tang, Frank Bruno, AJ. That was very nice that you guys did the sort of passing of the torch. But how, we don't own, what do we have? 2 more left with AJ? 3 more max?
Yeah.
Who knows? I was disappointed. Tyson came back. He comes out, and I knew he was always coming out, but he's talking about this Usyk fight. I don't want to see the Usyk fight. There's only one fight. Why?
I think it's all part of the game.
So you don't even believe that date that he threw out, the April 26th?
I did text Spencer and ask him for 6 ringside tickets to hold for me, but it's part and parcel of it.
Yeah.
That is what Tyson's an expert at. How long? Look, he's retired a few times and come back.
Yeah.
It's part of the game. I think everyone wants to see that Anthony Joshua fight. I think, Usyk won those 2 fights. He deserved to win those 2 fights. They're brilliant fights. They both deserve a huge amount of credit. But AJ against Fury is the fight we want to see. And I believe it will happen. But
You do?
I believe.
26?
Yeah, but we talk too much about things, don't we?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's better in silence rather than just keep going on about things that never materialize. Let it happen in silence. But Tyson's brilliant at what he does, isn't he? He's a great talker.
He is, but sometimes it gets a little bit tiresome. I'm in, I'm out. Yeah. Especially when you don't believe it. It's like, all right, when are we getting the announcement that you're back? On the day that he announces his retirement, we're wondering when's the other announcement coming, because it gets a little bit.
He's had a few, hasn't he?
Yes,
he's had a few.
And there's just one left, I think, for both of them. Like, of course, AJ versus I don't know. AJ versus Moses Atama would be fun one day. Yeah. It's not going to happen. I know it won't happen, but I'm just saying there's literally one left for the two of them. Just give us what we want, and by the way, they'll make a pretty penny.
Yeah. I've said before that I still love the Deontay Wilder fight.
Yeah.
That in terms of, we're in a business of narrative, aren't we? You can put on the best fight. You can work with the best fighters in the world who don't have a character or personality matching other people that will never generate the eyeballs and nights that we've seen from other fighters. And, we want to sell fights, and narrative is key to that. AJ against Wilder is a fight that's been spoken about for many years. I think that's a huge fight. AJ Fury, a huge fight. All of these fights are there to be made. I believe we'll see them, but this is the most important decision of AJ's career, this next step.
Okay.
And about being, because it's really the last move, whether he fights for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more fights, and only he will be the one to determine when he's ready to do that. This move right now is the key to that, and he had the injury after the Dubois fight. He wasn't going to be ready. And it was about just taking the time and putting yourself in a position to be ready to go and give yourself the best chance at this point of his career.
We probably don't see him this year, right?
I think we do. Latter
really?
part of the year.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we do. When you talk about Fury as well, that's a stadium fight.
Yeah.
That needs to be April, May.
Right.
I think there's a chance you see Anthony Joshua this year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Fourth quarter, November, December.
Yeah.
Who's he fighting?
Not Jake Paul.
Not Jake Paul. No? Is that not a real thing?
No, I saw it yesterday. He said it's happening. He said it's going to happen.
They've talked. I've seen the screen grabs.
He said it's going to happen.
Have you been involved in these discussions?
Not
I would
the
imagine.
Screen grabs. No, the DMs. The DMs, no. Look, a lot of people will laugh at it. I think if I was Anthony Joshua and I got an opportunity to fight a guy that was a Disney star a few years back.
Yeah. A few years back. No longer.
No longer.
Yeah.
But by the way, I don't discredit what he's, he puts the work and the effort in. But fighting Anthony Joshua is very different to fighting a 60-odd-year-old Mike Tyson.
Sure.
Let's be completely realistic about it. So,
but are these talks real? Or is it him just sort of trying to put it out there?
I think he's a tremendous marketeer, isn't he?
He was this close to getting the Canelo fight.
But right? that is what he does. He's and again, if you're a fighter and someone says you can get paid this to fight someone who's really good, or you can, and no disrespect again to him, but he's not at the level of these guys. He's not Canelo. He's not Anthony Joshua.
Sure.
Or you can get paid this to fight this guy who's had.
Oh yeah, it's sort of like the Ngannou fight too.
Yeah, but it's about marketing, isn't it? And that's what he does well.
Okay, but you've sort of danced around. Have there been any talks?
I think as much as the screen grabs as you've seen.
Okay.
But
whether
as far as real or not.
The Nikisas, the Franks, the Eddies,
no.
You guys haven't sat down and talked about it.
But again, in boxing, you write so. Who would have said Jake Paul would have fought Mike Tyson? Let's be honest. Right. You can write so many things off.
Right.
It's a mad business.
Okay, so just curious, from the T-boy to the intern, all that stuff, to CEO, how many steps is that?
It was about 3 years. So I was a T-boy, then I was ticketing. I worked in ticketing for our boxing business. Then I was an event assistant, then I was head of events. And I think I've been CEO for 5 years now, 6 years. When we launched in the US, I think around that period, I can't even remember it. This business goes so quickly.
I think that was
this was 2017 or something with Danny Jacobs. It was probably 4 or 5 roles to get to that point. And I think I've worked with so many senior people over the years that get put in a position that haven't had the experience in order to go into that position. I can sit and talk to everyone who works in our team. We've got 40, 50 people, and sit and understand what they're doing. I'm not saying I'm an expert at it, but I've been there because I've worked. I tried writing press releases. I wasn't very good at it, but I gave it a go. And I can sit and understand it all and sit with people. And I think for so many people in senior positions, they don't understand the business, and I've worked through that. So yeah, it's been an amazing journey. And I think we're so lucky to be in a business where every night you walk out and you look around and you go, either you go, this is great, or you go, this isn't good enough.
Right.
Because again, it's about being able to constructively improve stuff and go, do you know what, this can be better. And that's the joy I get every weekend, because I've been doing it so long now. We do close to 40 events a year, probably done 300 odd events.
And are you just focused on the boxing? Because I know Eddie has his hands in the other businesses. Are you just boxing?
Yeah, I sit on the board of our group company that, is the darts, snooker, 9-ball and boxing. But that's, a few board meetings. I go to some events of the other events to see how they're doing with things. Great businesses, darts, snooker, 9-ball. But my focus day in, day out is boxing.
In the early days, when you were CEO, but let's say 3-4 years ago, did you find that some of the older guard weren't taking you serious because of your age?
Yeah, I probably found that when I was about 24, 25, that people would go, all right, yeah, I'll talk to Eddie, and I think only over time, once you show you can deal with things with experience and people start to respect you and go, actually, he knows what he's talking about.
Okay.
And that just takes time. And once you get into a position, it becomes a lot easier. But because I built relationships over the years, when we made Anthony Joshua against Joseph Parker, that was 2017, I think, 2018. And I remember sitting in an office with David Higgins with his vest on. He took his shirt off because he was hot. And it was like sitting with him and Eddie. And, when you start to build these relationships and you start to work through it, people start to respect and go, actually, on the outside, everyone looks at Eddie because he's the face and he's amazing for our business. But there's a lot of work that goes on in the background. So yeah, it's over time, it's got a lot easier.
I have heard actually a word on the street that you crack the whip, someone was making a joke about in terms of expenses and hotel and stuff like you don't want to mess with Frank. Frank, you're not a freewheeling big spender.
I'm the accountant.
Yeah.
Look, I came from the school of Barry, Eddie's father, was the youngest ever chartered accountant in the UK, and I grew up basically Eddie's like an older brother to me. I spent more time with Eddie than I have anyone else. It's like family.
Yeah.
So I grew up with Barry's mentality and everything's numbers. And that's why we're a perfect mix, because Eddie is the passion of boxing. And he has a go at me. He's like, you don't care about this. And I'm just literally a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Like a walking, talking spreadsheet. And he's like, I want to do more fights. I was like, no, we can't do more fights because of this. So it's a good balance. It's a great balance. And I think every business, like we said earlier, needs that balance of people. But yeah, I'm fair, but I'm strict.
Fair enough.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Have you ever been close to leaving?
No, never.
Not being recruited or said, I'm tired of this?
I wouldn't. Look, I don't want to work in boxing forever. I'll be honest with you. It's a terrible business because of the people involved in the sport. I don't want to be around some of these people. I'll stomach it, and I don't make rash decisions because I don't like someone or I don't agree. I'll make decisions that make sense for the business and the fighters we represent. But leaving, never. Because they gave me an opportunity, and everything that Barry, Eddie said they've done for me. And I get to really direct something in a direction. As much as Eddie is, again, go back to the face, I get to direct it, the decisions we make every day. And they let me really run along with it. Eddie makes a joke that we just wheel him out in a wheelchair and say, go and sell the fight. And then it's like, right, in the background, I love just making things happen. And I've been given that opportunity. And to do that, we're the biggest boxing promoter globally. We're the only people who promote shows week in, week out around the world. And to be able to do that and to have built that from 14 years ago or, 12, 14 years ago, it's amazing to be a part of. And I think the day I don't have the drive that I have now, I'll go, let someone else do it. But I have the drive, like I say, of every night walking out and looking around and going, wow, this is great.
And it's impressive drive. I've seen maybe the end of the year you've said I've been in hotels this many nights. What are you averaging? Last year?
300 nights in hotels.
300 nights?
Yeah. So I'll go home for a night. I went home for a night. I go away for another 2 weeks. I go home for a night or two.
Gosh, that doesn't wear on you.
Yeah, it's not sustainable. That's the part I will in time look to bring that, because you can't do it.
Yeah.
But it's not just events. It's like on Monday I was in Monaco meeting the government about our event there. Flew from
This
Monaco.
Monday?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then flew here. And then before that I was in Manchester for 5 days. And then before, it's just like it never ends. And people look at it, from the outside, people go, wow, that's amazing. And it is amazing. I would never complain about it. But it's not sustainable. It's not a
How
sustainable.
much longer can you do that? Realistically.
4 or 5 years maybe.
Okay.
I just don't think as 100 flights a year.
100.
And I'm not the healthiest guy. I try and run, but I'm not really. I like my
Are you on
food.
pace? Are you on pace to do that again this year?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But it's literally, we are like a traveling circus. Finish an event, you get back on the Monday, you're back working, then you're working through, and then you go to another event, and it's just back to back to back.
When does the Netflix series come out?
September.
So I would imagine we're going to see a lot of that.
Yeah.
You're in it.
Yes. Yeah. It's across our whole group.
Are you worried about it?
No.
Are there things that you're worried about?
No. It was an amazing experience. I mean, having watched, the Drive to Survive's obviously Box to Box produced this, to be a part of it was amazing. And I think in years to come, we'll look back on and go, wow, what about that time? It was a bit to get used to, because you'd be having a conversation like this and a boom mic would come in and people would be like, what are you doing? But it was something I pushed very hard for.
Okay.
And there was certain people in our business that we got a great business. We got a very successful business that's been successful for a number of years. And it was like, do we really need this? But I looked at what it did for Formula One. And I'm not saying it was the sole factor, but I do think it was a huge factor in what has been
Especially
created.
here in America.
Yeah. And I look at it for our business. We're a business full of characters, and people buy into that these days. As much as we want to build the fighters, and that's the focus for us. We also, if we can build our business at the same time and build storylines around that, and it grows the sports we're involved in, then that's beneficial for everyone.
By the way, new game in town, Zuffa Boxing.
Yep.
How do you feel about them?
I think it's great for the sport. I think any new entrants...
They're trying to ruffle the feathers, though, right?
Yeah.
They're trying to reinvent the game.
Yeah, but to see, look, what they've done with the UFC is spectacular.
Yeah.
I think it was different times in a different sport, which didn't have the history and heritage that boxing has of hundreds of years of being this sexy sport. Boxing has had so many storylines, so many promoters over the years, and UFC, they came in, they brought everything together. And yeah, it's unbelievable what they've done. I don't think you can do that now in boxing. I think there will always be, it will coexist, is my view. But I do
Can't be
like
the same model, though, right?
No, not as the UFC, but I look at boxing as well, and I think things need to change in boxing. In this fast-paced world we're in, of people who need to be entertained within a minute. We sit and watch reels, we sit and watch TikToks. If they don't interest us within 10 seconds, we're on to the next thing. It's the same with sport. And it's the same with the younger audience coming through. They want to be entertained immediately. Like this thing we talk about fights and the boxing start, people 6-8 rounds in and it's dull, and it's like that. For me, I'm not, again, a major boxing fan. And I know that may sound crazy, but
I get it.
I look at the product and go, things can change. And I think shorter formats can work in boxing. More engaging formats can work in boxing. Selling narrative. And, sometimes it's about two people being on a similar level. You can be the best fighter in the world, but if you don't have a storyline and you don't sell yourself, I look at Andre Ward, a perfect example of that. How good was Andre Ward? But when he was active fighting, he didn't really do any media. He wasn't as big as he probably deserved to be with his skill. He's just one example of a fighter. But yeah, look, Zuffa Boxing, I think is brilliant. I think anything that brings money into the sport, investment into the sport, it's great.
When's the DAZN deal up?
Next year, but we're working
Already?
through that now. Yeah,
So end of 26.
yeah, it was a 5-year deal.
Okay. Are we going to go out and...
We're in a great place. Look, we made the move to DAZN at a time where people looked at us and said, "What, what are they doing?" At that point, we believed in the DAZN platform, and look at where we are now. Look, they've got a Club World Cup with FIFA,
Yeah.
with the final on Sunday. They're the major home of boxing. Every major event Saturday night, Ring 3 on DAZN. We believed in where DAZN would be, and it wasn't that we thought at that point they were where they were going to be. They were investing heavily into sports, but we knew the direction it was going in. So, for us, we're big believers in DAZN. They backed us as well. They backed us, in the US when we launched in the US. So, we're working through all that now, but we've got a great partnership with them.
Is this Shakur's last fight with Matchroom?
Yeah, but we've got a great relationship with him. You know,
I think you will.
I hope so. I think where Eddie's been very good as well. You know, with Shakur. Another one was Terence Crawford.
Yeah,
Bringing out fighters' personalities.
yeah.
You know, and I think
I thought it
Shakur
was
naturally
going great.
Yeah, but I think Shakur naturally is getting better at that. You know, he's a great talker. But the same with Terence. You know, when Eddie would spend time around him, when we had that LA show as well, when Matchroom fought him, the personality, and that's our job as promoters. And I think sometimes that's lost amongst a lot of promoters. You know, and that's what we need to focus on. But, you know, with Shakur, there's big fights to be made. And I think with the relationship we have, there's much more we can do together.
Okay, so the next one for him is obviously this Saturday, Louis Armstrong Stadium. Katie on Friday. A lot to be excited about. You just signed Molly McCann as well.
Yeah,
former UFC fighter.
Yeah, brilliant. You know, I've known Molly for a few years, not too closely, but having now spent a bit more time with her, she's brilliant. You know, she gets behind things, and that's obviously why she's still got the relationship with UFC as well. And she's a great character, and people are interested in her. And, you know, I think she's going to have a great story in boxing, and excited to get that started.
Lovely stuff. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Congrats on all your success. This was great. Our first official chat.
Yes.
Big one. We don't need Eddie anymore.
No. I mean, he's much
dominates.
better at this than me.
No,
and,
he's, you know.
he's got better hair.
He's obviously a presence.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed this. I enjoyed this very much.
Thank you for having
me. Great and wonderful to see your success, honestly, for you personally and for the entire company. So keep it up. Thank you so much. There he is, Mr. Frank Smith, CEO of Matchroom Boxing. We will take a quick break, and then we'll bring in the president of the Anthem Sports Group, the Fight Network, Invicta FC, and of course, TNA Wrestling. It's a business kind of day here on the program. Do not go anywhere. We'll be back with Carlos Silva. Thanks for watching this video. Before you go, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for us. Also, give us a thumbs up, leave a nice comment. These things go a long way. And while you're here, do check out the rest of the channel. We've got live shows and full interviews, clips, and a whole lot more. We're doing big things here, and we appreciate your support very much.